Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I have a super fun video to share because it is part of a Heffy Doodle collaboration with Pink & Main. So these two companies are coming together to produce this hop where a whole bunch of crafters are using products from both of the companies on a single project or card. So I had so much fun using products from both of these companies on this card and I hope that you'll enjoy watching this video. Make sure to check out the video description box below my video to find out who your next stop on the hop is as well. So to start, I'm going to be building my background, and to do that I've already gone ahead and pre-cut out some pieces. In white blending cardstock, I've got a piece that I've cut out with the Heffy Doodle Breaking Waves border die. And then I have 3 pieces of Neenah Desert Storm cardstock, which is this brown craft cardstock that I cut out with some hillside border dies, just in different orientations to kind of give that sloping sands look. And then finally at the top I have a white piece of blending cardstock that I've just cut with a rectangle die, and that will be sort of the top part of the card looking like the sky. So I'm going to start by blending the sky with Distress Oxidings, and I have 2 colors here. One is a yellow color, that's Scattered Straw, and then the light blue is Tumbled Glass. And I'm blending these together, and I wanted the Scattered Straw to be there to kind of look like sort of the glow of a horizon, sort of like the sun is either rising or setting, and it's just generating that sort of yellow glow behind the horizon of sand. And I blended that into Tumbled Glass using my Distress Ink Foam blending tools, just kind of going back and forth between the colors and making sure that they're nicely blended. Once I was okay with the blending, I came back to my water piece, which again was die cut with that Breaking Wave stencil from Heffy Doodle, and I have 2 colors of blue that I'm blending on this. The first one is Peacock Feathers, which is that beautiful teal and turquoise, and the second one is Mermaid Lagoon, which is that beautiful bright blue. And just like the sky piece, what I'm doing is I'm just bringing on each color one at a time and then kind of just going back and forth a little bit to blend them together until I'm happy with the blend. Now I wanted to add a little bit of extra detail, so I took some liquid shimmer and splattered it onto that water piece just to give it a little bit of shimmer. I just used a paintbrush to splatter it on from an acrylic block, and you get this beautiful shine. After I cleaned that up, I came back in with my sky piece and I splattered that with some white paint. I just mixed a bit of white paint with some water, just to make sure that it was a good consistency for splattering. And then I just splattered the whole thing right over the panel just to add a little bit of really nice extra splattery detail with that white. And I like white splatter because it kind of blends into the background a little bit. It doesn't stand out hugely, but it does add a really nice extra level of detail. Now for the sand, I wanted that to be a little bit splattered as well, just to give it a little bit of extra dimension rather than just being plain Neenah Desert Storm cardstock. So I took some brown watercolor paint and I splattered it onto each piece, just to give, again, that little extra dimension, a little extra detail of splatter. Now, off camera, I went ahead and stamped out a whole bunch of images, both from Heffy Doodle and Pink & Main, using some Copic-friendly black ink, because I'm going to be coloring in these images with Copic markers. The images that I'm using on this card come from a few different stamp sets, like I mentioned, from Heffy Doodle and Pink & Main. So the sloth that I'm coloring in now comes from the Pink & Main Summer Sloths stamp set. As you can see, I had already started coloring one there. You can see it partially colored in, but I ended up not really liking the combination of colors that I chose. I just wasn't really happy with them, so I decided to just restamp it out, and you'll see me coloring in that same image in a little bit. But here I am coloring in the second sloth, and I was happy with how I used colors on this one, so these are the colors that I ended up using for the second sloth once I restamped it. So I'm just using my typical Copic coloring technique, and if you've never watched any of my videos, I do explain my Copic coloring technique quite often. I use Copic coloring in almost all of my videos. It's one of my favorite techniques to use for coloring, because I just love how easily you can blend the colors together and how they look kind of professional, even though you're not, at least I'm not a professional artist. Also, if you've never watched any of my videos, I do have to introduce my cat Luna, who likes to visit me while I'm crafting quite often. So if you have watched some of my videos, you will recognize her as having visited many a video before, and she tends to sort of just walk back and forth where I'm crafting and just want nuzzles and cuddles. So if you see a gray furry cat walking back and forth along the video, that is Luna. Anyways, back to Copic coloring. So like I was saying, I do a lot of Copic coloring in my videos, and I've explained my technique a lot, but I will explain it again now. I will start by saying, first of all, that, you know, with Copic coloring, like with anything, it's all about practice and just testing out new things. So when I first started coloring with Copics, if I look back on some of the older cards that I've made, I'm not super happy with how they look. I don't think I did the greatest job, but it was all part of learning and kind of just figuring out how the markers work on your own. After doing all of that, the technique that I've come around to using is generally to start with a darker shade and put it where you think there will be shadow. So I usually put it sort of like along the bottom of the critters, off to one side. If I can imagine the light is coming, for example, from the top left, I'll put shadow down like the bottom right side of the critters. And once I have the darkest shade put down in areas of shadow, I come back in with a lighter shade and just blend it out. And sometimes I use a middle. So as you can see for this lobster, I'm using 3 shades. So I put down the darkest one and then I put the middle sort of over top layered with that. And then I came in with the lightest one to fill in the rest of the space. It kind of depends on the size of the image for me. Sometimes I use just 2 shades if it's a very small image, and if it's a slightly larger image, then sometimes I use 3 shades just because you can get a little bit more dimension from 3 shades, and if it's a larger image, you might want that extra dimension, so it doesn't look quite so flat as it might look if you only used 2. So that's generally my technique. Sometimes after I put down the lighter shade, I'll come back in with the darker shade just to really add an extra layer of dimension. If you are only using 2 shades, this is a really good way to get sort of a faux layer of dimension, or a faux third shade, I should say, because if you just use the dark shade and then blend it out with a light shade and you come back in with the dark shade, the second time you come in with the dark shade, it almost appears darker than the first time you would put it there, because after you had put it there the first time, you then blended it out with a light shade, so you kind of diminished it a little bit. So if you come back with a dark shade, it adds sort of a darker shade than what was there before. So you kind of get like a false third shade, even with just 2 markers. So if you are limited in how many Copic markers you have and you only have 2 shades per color family, you can still get a really nice dimensional look. I would recommend trying that, where you blend it out with the light shade and then come back in with the dark once you're done to try and get a darker look. Okay, so for the rest of these images, I'm really just coloring them in sort of typical colors that I think they would be in real life. I'm not going too crazy. So the lobster and the crab are red. The sand is all kind of different shades of brown. For some of these accessories, the pail and the shovel, I used a light peach, as well as this little floating ball in the ocean. Oh, and I should mention that I did say that the sloth is from the Summer Sloth set. That's where a lot of these summery, beachy-like images are from Pink and Main. But the rest are from a couple stamp sets from Heffy Doodle. One is called You Go Gull, and one is called A Little Shellfish. And they both feature really adorable sort of beach-themed images, with the You Go Gull set featuring a whole bunch of these seagull images, and then the A Little Shellfish set featuring some crabs and some fun sort of beachy accessories. So those are the 3 stamp sets I combined: the You Go Gull, the A Little Shellfish from Heffy Doodle, and then the Summer Sloths from Pink and Main. And I really love how these stamp sets work so well together, because they both have like beachy themed images, and so as long as you just put all these images on a beach, they look like they're meant to be, and the styles really do coordinate quite nicely. So I loved using these together. So now I'm coming back to that original sloth that I had mentioned. I didn't really love the coloring that I had done the first time, and I'm coloring it in again. So now I'm using the same combination that I had tried on that second sloth I colored, and I liked it, so I can use it here as well. So like I mentioned, I'm just kind of laying that dark shade down where there should be shadow and coming back in with the lighter shade to sort of blend it out. And for this sloth, I'm just using 2 shades. So again, you really don't have to use 3 shades. 2 are sometimes good enough, and you can still get a really nice blend and dimensional look. So I'm putting down that light shade where I think the light would be hitting the sloth, and then for his face, or her face, I'm coming back in with a very light brown shade, because I wanted the face to be a little bit lighter than the body. For the sloth's bathing suit, I'm coming back in again with that same sort of peachy tone that I had used on some of the other accessories. For their drink, I'm coloring it in orange, like it might be orange juice or some sort of fun orange cocktail. And then for the lawn chair or the beach chair, I just wanted it to be almost like it was white, so I just added some warm gray shadows where I thought the sloth would be creating a shadow, but I left the rest white because I wanted the bench to be white. Okay, and that will finish off the main part of the coloring for this card. So now I'm getting started on the rest of the elements of the card. And for the sentiment, I took the Pink and Main Sunshine dies, which comes with a sunshine word die and a background sort of bubble border die. And I cut the word sunshine out of gold glittery cardstock, and then I cut that bubbly background out of white. And I just like that there's this option to create that sort of backing for the words because it really like allows the words to pop. They don't blend into the background. They have this sort of backing to pop them up. So I just took some liquid glue and dabbed it onto the back of the word dies, and then I'm able to stick it down onto that white sort of bubbly border backing. And I used my craft tweezers to sort of just place it properly, and then I just pressed it right down until it dried. So off camera, I've gone ahead and cut out all of those images that I colored, and now I can start assembling them onto the card. So first I'm assembling the background. I took a standard sized white card base, so it's just 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just gluing down the background pieces one by one with liquid glue. And what I'm doing is I'm just making sure not to go too high with the liquid glue onto these pieces because I knew that I wanted to possibly tuck some of the images behind these little hills, so I left some space to do that. So I didn't put the glue right up to the edge on the top. I left a little bit of space for tucking. So once I got down to the bottom, I glued that water piece down, and then the whole background is ready to go. Now I'm just assembling the rest of these pieces, so I'm taking those cute star sunglasses and just gluing them onto the forehead of the sloth. And then I'm just placing a little bit of foam behind the sloth. I'm just using some foam squares. And what I like to do when I'm building scenes like this is I just take the images and I put some foam squares on them, at least the ones that I want to be elevated. And I just put the foam squares on, but I don't take the backing off. So they still have the release paper on them on the back, so they're not sticky. And I can just lay the images on the card with their foam behind them where I want them to be. And I just do this until all of the images are in place where I want them. And that allows me to kind of fiddle around with things, make sure that the placement is right, make sure that I like things where they are. I can always move things around if I don't like it. Like I just moved that sand bucket over to the left because I thought it filled in that space better. And I glued the little shovel into the lobster's hand. And then I can kind of play around with things and make sure that the placement is completely perfect before I stick anything down. So before I even stick things down, I'm finishing off the sentiment with a little part of a sentiment that came from the Pink and Main My Sunshine stamp set, which is a really adorable sort of mini-sized sentiment stamp set that has a whole bunch of accessory sentiments to go with the word sunshine. So I used the sending you so that I could say sending you sunshine. But they also have a lot of other options in that stamp set, like they have sunshine of my life, sunshine and smiles, hello sunshine, things like that. So a lot of really cute sentiments. In addition to that, I also stamped out Have a Crabulous Day, which comes with the Heffy Doodle, a little shellfish stamp set. So I'm using sentiments from both Pink and Main and Heffy Doodle. For both of those, I just heat emboss them with gold, and then as you just saw, I cut out the smaller one, the Have a Crabulous Day, with some Pink and Main sentiment strip dies, which is this wonderful set of sentiment strips that have the banner edges on them, and they come in all different lengths. So they're perfect for like any sentiment that you could possibly have. Now they are quite small and thin. The thickness, I guess, of them, the height is quite thin, so they're good for small sentiments. In terms of the small font size, but the sentiment can be very long. They have all kinds of different lengths in this set. It's a really cool die set. And again, it's called the Sentiment Strip Dies from Pink and Main. For the sending you part of the sentiment, I just cut it into a small banner and stuck it right down onto the card base with some liquid glue. And then for the rest of these images, I can just go through and stick them down one by one. I know where they have to be because I've already laid everything out, so all I have to do is go through one by one and stick them down. For some of the images, I decided to stick them straight down onto the card base with some liquid glue, and that would just be the images that I kind of felt like might be better to sort of drift into the background. But for a lot of the images, like the critters mostly, the lobster and the little crab and the sloths, of course, I used that foam square backing for those, and I just kind of pulled off the release paper and stuck them down one by one. So once I was done that, the card is almost complete. I am sticking down these cute little stars as well, and then after that, the card is done. So that is the final card. I'm just going to turn it in the light so you can see all the shine that you get from that beautiful glitter paper as well as that splattered glitter that I put in the background, especially on the water and the sky. I just love how these images work so seamlessly well together and create this most adorable beach scene. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you're enjoying the hop. Don't forget to check the video description below to see what your next stop on the hop is. And if you're interested in seeing more of my cards, head over to my Instagram account, which is also linked down below in that video description. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!